Cheers for coming, everyone. Absolutely buzzing to be here. So my part of the session is going to be about breaking into contracting and freelancing. And it's probably going to sound like this was a very strategic, structured journey. That definitely wasn't the case, but I'll try and make it so that you could approach it that way. But first of all, I'm just about this excited to be on with my community heroes, awesome people in the audience, and my good friends Keith and Sarah. So wicked, thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks for having us. So very quickly, I'm Franco Musso. I am a freelancer. I've never really done a permanent job, but I've got a lot of experience in contracting, in freelancing, and I'll take you through some of the many jobs that that I've done in the past. I love to travel, which has been a big part of fueling my freelance journey. I like to take off 5 months in a year, if I can help it, but get as much traveling as absolutely possible. And the ultimate goal is to follow spring and summer around the world, never quite have those cold months. I'm a father of four, got four daughters from 14 up to 22. I don't do Microsoft Search, feel free to shoot me now, but it's never been a blocker for contracting or for freelancing. I also don't like to do meetings if I can help it. And I don't like this, your urgency is my urgency. So that's a conversation I'm always having with clients. My kind of way of approaching life and my career has been flying by the seat of my pants. I'll give you a few examples of that as I go along. And if you want to link up, there's my LinkedIn, my blog, and X as well. Right, so first question that a lot of people had at Scottish Summit is, how do these two things differ, contracting and freelancing? There's not necessarily a hard and fast definition. I take you through what it's meant to me. And I'll take you through how can you design your runway. So if you're in permanent now and you're thinking in the future, I'd like to break into contracting and ultimately into freelancing, how do you get away from being full-time in the weeds to attracting the right clients, keeping the right clients, identifying your USP, and build a flywheel that says, right, the customers keep coming back to me, I'm magnetic, I've got the repeat business, and I'm not wasting much of the working year trying to chase leads and what have you. So I do this session. I've been asked by a lot of friends in the community to help them into freelancing, whether that's for side gigs or to get into contracting for some extra money. And I think a lot of it's been prompted by this idea of career insurance. We've seen all these layoffs and the security that we believed we had with permanent roles not quite giving us that warm fuzzy feeling anymore. So what I'm hoping you'll learn is the differences between perm, contracting and freelancing, the different ways of working. What's the optimal path to get from permanent work into contracting and then into freelancing? So if you hadn't guessed, that is the order that I'd suggest you do that in. Don't try and jump from permanent to freelancing and wonder why you've got no clients. How to position yourself and your USP, getting those clients and retaining them, and then working towards that being in demand and getting the repeat business. And for me, like I said, this has been very much about designing my ideal lifestyle. So that might be taking mid-weekends, that's a term I think I coined. Or like I said, it's things like taking months off throughout the year, kind of taking your retirement as you go before you're too old and boring to properly enjoy it. So that structured journey, here's how it actually went for me. It's real life footage of me throughout the career. So it's kind of worked out well, but it's always been just right. Let's wing it. Let's see how it goes. We'll take any opportunities, take roles that are just outside the comfort zone, and just keep building my way towards that. That was propelled by a couple of things. So first of all, life costs, number of kids increasing rapidly. And my careful planning being sprint on the spot, don't stop, looking back from being maybe 25 to 35. Again, real life footage of my career there. For the first 9 years at least. So I've been there, all the tough stuff that you guys have likely been through, burnouts, the crazy periods, doing months back to back without the weekends, burning the midnight oil, all that good stuff. So here's how I see the difference between permanent contract and freelance, maybe go through some of the positives and negatives and how you make your way from one to the other. So the positives, yes, job security. So we've got that guaranteed salary. We can hopefully get some mentoring. Some people at ANS lucky enough to be mentored by Keith, for example. Your employee perks. Again, an example of ANS, just I know lots of friends working there. You've got things like the Squirrel Club and all those, all that support mechanism that's there. You've got a team, so you don't have to kind of build the camaraderie yourself. You don't have to go and find it from the community. You physically got a team that you're working with. You've got progression potentially. And then some of the negatives, as I see it, is you've got the limit to the income. You've got the strategic direction of the company isn't necessarily where you want to be. So they'll typically do what pleases shareholders, and you guys have got to roll with that. And you have got the joys of office politics and policies. And for contracting, the main positive for me was always income. That has changed quite a bit now. I feel that permanent roles and salaries have really caught up with contracting quite a bit. But I did get to cherry pick projects, so that was great. That every next tool that I wanted to learn in Power Platform, or every next vertical that I wanted to get on my CV, I could cherry pick those projects to quite a degree and help me to specialize. So I'm now 99% Power Pages. If I was in a permanent role, I wouldn't necessarily have got the chance to choose that, but contracting is our role. If I've got multiple contracts offered to me, one of them is Power Pages, that's going to be the one I go on. So knowing that at some point I do want to break into freelance, I do want to start my own company, so I'm going to stick to that specialism. Stay on the latest and greatest as well. So I have got some amazing developer friends that are stuck, especially in the US, in fact, on large projects that have been going on for 3-5 years, and they just haven't got those sharp cutting edge skills anymore. There would have to be quite a bit of upskilling if they went back on the market. So some negatives is you're still tied Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, typically for one client at a time. Almost always firefighting. Every contract role near enough that I went on was the red flag was an urgent requirement. Typically means they've fucked everything up beforehand. I've got to go in and fix everything, got to break the news to the CTO that everything that's spent millions of pounds building so far needs scrapping. Not an easy conversation to have. You've got things like your company admin dealing with legislation like IR35. It does introduce some headaches. It's not just, right, I get to work on all the cool stuff and get hands dirty. But getting your hands dirty, I would say, is another perk of contracting and freelancing versus permanent. So many amazing technical people in the community. When you reach a certain point on the ladder, you're moving away from being able to get your hands dirty and actually working with the tech. And you're doing things like the dog and pony shows, presentations, pre-sales, using much more soft skills than your technical capabilities. This is all obviously biased completely to my opinion, but it's what I've heard from friends as well. So freelance, I would say positives, absolutely the lifestyle. Like I said, I'm kind of designing my year around travel and getting to see as much of spring and summer as possible. So I've, since 2018, usually at least taken the summer off. There's unlimited upside, which I believe the world of work, that will just be the norm for more and more people, that if it's not commission based, there'll be some kind of performance related pay. The happier you keep customers, the more ROI you deliver, the better you get paid. I've felt unaffected by the market. In fact, when we came to do this session, I was very surprised to hear what a tough time it's been on both the contract and the permanent market in the last couple of years. I haven't felt that at all. Business development gets easier by the year. So I've got the benefit of all the repeat business. My name's out there more and more people finding my content. So I'm having to put less and less effort to go and win the business. That's finding me. So the longer you stick at it, the more benefit you're going to get. So the negatives being from scratch. So when you first break into being freelance, the time it takes to get some traction, to find the clients, to get your name out there. The workload can be very much feast or famine. So I've just had a pretty crazy November and December of work. can't moan too much because I've took the 5 months off, as I said, but there are clients that I've chased all year that I had no urgency until it's like, right, the year's about to end and we all want to go live in 2 weeks, and it's like, shit, how do I make that happen? And that's kind of, some of that has been giving them a bit of tough love, like I say, to say, unfortunately, your urgency can't be my urgency, and my customers that have carefully planned, I can't just push them to the back of the queue because you've reared your head. So I would say your goals, if you're moving from permanent to contract, I would say is a pretty smooth transition as long as you've got some money behind you. If you've got something to demo, go through some other tips shortly. But if you're looking to make the leap from contract to freelance, what I would say your goals are to have 10 customers that want to continue to do business with you. So that might be 10 three-month contracts you've already done, or 10 6-month contracts you've already done. Typically, I find you do a good job, you launch, you get them live, you've done some handover training, but they haven't usually got all the skills in-house. They want some way of continuing to engage with you. So that's a great position to be in. That means your phone's already going to be ringing. You've already got some work for when you make that leap. You're not going to tumbleweed. Niche down. So I don't believe such thing exists as a freelance jack of all trades. So like I said, for me, it's very much power pages and power pages that look good. So kind of tying that with some user experience and web dev skills, and build some assets as well. Don't be going into this with no tool set. So I'll take you through that in a couple of slides, what I consider my tool set to be, and how that can make each project more profitable and quicker to complete as well. And also, massive tip, have some demoable examples. So if you can't demo your USP, if you can't demo the slick apps that you can build, it just doesn't go down well, especially at the pre-sales or the interview stage. So even if that means repurposing something that would otherwise be behind a login wall, would otherwise be protected by NDA, have a go at recreating something in a developer environment, get something that you can show off. So for me, that was a Spotify clone that I built. That won me maybe my first 10, 15 projects was just a passion project that I built with my children, and then retrospectively seemed like quite a clever thing to do because I had something to show off and something that was a good example of pushing those UI UX capabilities. There's something that I haven't mentioned there. So I've said apart something that Irfan mentioned at Scottish Summit. I mentioned permanent contract freelancing. I haven't mentioned building a mega corporation or starting my own Microsoft partner or practice. But the whole reason for that for me was it was about getting away from that burnout and the constant rat race, and getting into something where I can design my my lifestyle rather than, well, I'll just go and build the mega corporation and still spend all that much time and having to commute and work 9 to 5 and all that good stuff. So I'm not boring you going through all of these jobs that I've done in the past, but suffice to say, I've been around as well. So I've worked in tons of different industries, inside and outside of tech. Going back, I've had a job since I was, I think, 11. At various times, I've had 3+ jobs at any one time before I got into the freelancing. But I thought useful to mention after Gabrielle's question. So, for those of that those of us that have been around, where have we been? What have we done? But I find a lot of benefit that I can bring, having worked across different verticals and across totally different sizes of business. It really adds to my creative problem solving skills. And so often I can often offer a suggestion to, say, insurance from something that I picked up from a job in leisure, or that I've picked up from a job in finance, in car sales, even working at McDonald's. There's all kinds of different left field stuff for one industry that is totally obvious for others. So firstly, very quickly, some tips for contracting. So if you're going into contracting, I would say, first of all, absolutely be hungry, prove yourself, keep adding the value. And I always treated every month like it was my probation. So it was always, right, I want to earn my right to be here next month. I want to earn my right to get that extension at the end of this. I would add to this as well, it's a meritocracy, so don't take it personally if you're not extended at the end of your period. It may well be that you've delivered all the value they want out of you. It may well be, well, you didn't deliver what we were hoping you to do, or the project didn't, and therefore that's it. It's the best to remain, and to be blunt about it. Empower others where possible. So you never know who it is that's going to be the hiring manager next time around. So I've got some customers that I've had for 10 plus years, quite junior people when I started, and now they're hiring managers and heads of departments. It's great to not have to like, oh crap, hope it's not such a person I've got to deal with that I treated badly. I know that I left a nice feeling with them, that I helped them along in their careers. Very important. I'd relate this to James's question as to whether CVs are still a thing. So for me with contracting, absolutely. I had a 20-page CV full of case studies, loads of details about what were the challenges, what did I deliver, what was the ROI, all this good stuff. But yeah, I would say write the case studies as you go. It's so hard to overlook detail retrospectively, whereas when you're in the weeds and you're in the thick of it, keep a case study going. I'd usually do it in Apple Notes. Be way too long to start with, but it's much easier to trim that down at the end than it is to try and think back, like what were all the struggles, how did we get around them, blah blah blah. So sounds so obvious, but be a pleasure to work with. Again, you want to be front of mind. You don't want to be, oh crap, we're going to have to bring them in again, as much as a pain in the backside to deal with. You want it to be front of mind and for positive reasons. And going back to Kamal's question, I think a useful one that we kind of discussed, Sarah, Keith and I at Scottish Summit. So the question being about what's the market look like in January, I would say with contracting and to a degree with freelancing, you're at the mercy of mercy of the market and timing. So for example, helping friends into work over December can be a nightmare because everyone's looking to be away for Christmas, so you can't get to the decision makers. January, everybody's slow coming back in and trying to find their feet. And then often by the time you get to speak to that decision maker, they're waiting for the budget to come in April. Then when August comes, everyone's away on holiday. There's just all these quirks you kind of have to get used to as a contractor. Whereas permanent, you're making that leap once and you might get 10 years, 20 years out of that effort you've put in, rather than here it might be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. But yeah, do bear in mind that if you got the chance to stay in a role over Christmas, that I would recommend you do. Right, so benefits of freelance. I would say, like I mentioned before, I will speed up a little bit, that less affected by market conditions. So I haven't felt any of the effects of the slowdown in the market in the last few years. My demand, in fact, has increased a lot, and I've had to turn down a lot of work. When I was a contractor, frustrating, like for example, I want to buy a house, I want to do some overtime, it was always met with suspicion. Plus you, pardon the French, you might have come across permanent staff treating contractors like twats, like they're there to raid the company bank account and skin people alive rather than bring in some just-in-time skills. And the ladder in the career progression for me in permanent work was usually towards management and more admin heavy things, and as I say, getting away from hands dirty and creative aspects. So that absolutely wasn't for me. So freelance means that I can still bring in that big income, but be able to do the bits that keep me interested and excited. Got more control over what I can charge as well. So I definitely found with freelancing, there was a particular market rate that people had in mind per role, as if every functional consultant was as good as every other functional consultant, or every solution architect is only as productive as any other solution architect, where with freelance, much more control of that. I'd also say as well, designing your lifestyle, no quibbles around remote working. I think I've been on site maybe 5 times in 5 years. That might be an exaggeration, maybe 10 times in 5 years. Usually 90+% of the time I get to use my own hardware. So I have become a snob when it comes to laptops and coffee. In fact, I get to choose my own coffee at home. And I get to align the work that I do with what I want to learn. So with my lifestyle, with the people and the customers and the industries that I want to work with. So for example, if I see that a certain job is just going to be tons of bureaucracy, meetings, that every decision is going to take months, if I can help it, I'll just dodge that. So does freelancing work for all roles? And again, I said this is my opinion. It's not necessarily hard and fast rules, but I would say the closer you are to the end product or the result, the more you can charge, and the better fit really that it is for freelance. The reason for that being that the more value the customer perceives. So if I'm seen to be the one that I deliver this portal to you, I take it from requirements into a tangible result, or I say that I can offer you a service with your Power Automate flows where I'm going to save you tens of thousands of API calls, which results in this amount of cost saving, this amount of process time saving. That's a much easier sell for freelance than what it is to say, well, I'm a freelance business analyst, or I'm a freelance project manager, or I'm freelance and I deliver documentation, because at risk of offending a lot of people, to my end clients, they typically see those kind of outputs as necessary evils or prerequisites rather than the actual value. They want the tangible thing, like the portal, the Canvas app, the model-driven app, and the training course, perhaps. Now I'm halfway through. Should we pause for questions? I can't see the chat, so Sarah and Keith, if you want to butt in.
Yeah, I've got a hand up there, Nathan. You go for it, buddy.
Yeah, Franco, I'm really curious why you think you've not seen the sorry, I'm getting an echo. The economic challenges that everyone else has in the permanent contracting market.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I guess a big part of it is the repeat business, but it's tough for me to say in the sense that I'm not going out looking for the work. The work's coming to me, and I say I'm turning down projects each year. So I've not got a great answer as to why that's happened. It's just kind of that's how I realised that. So I essentially wasn't aware of the downturn, particularly until Sarah had mentioned it in the prep for this session, and then
that's awesome.
To the recruiters. Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's more. Oh, I'm there an echo, Frank. It might be because
I think it might be your end. Yeah.
There's no real questions, to be honest. More just comments in the chat, so you might just have to catch up on that.
Just a quick one. I think Gabriel's hands just got.
Sorry, yeah, there's the echo that's coming from Francesco's side, but I think I can talk through it. I did put a question in the Q&A section, and it was kind of a Q&A or a two-parter here. My first part was, could you share any methods that you would use to identify and approach new customers without an established client base?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, that has all been through community outreach. So going back to a lot of what Keith and Sarah had said. So when I first started in freelance, it was very much relying on my existing customer base from the contracting side. There was only so much work coming from that. Now, what I'm saying, I'm inundated and having to turn down work. That's getting work directly from Microsoft, which is a result of work that I've done in the community, blog posts, building in public. So some of these tips will come up in my slides in a moment. But yeah, really that is it. Not had to advertise, not had to do tenders, not had to do cold outreach or anything like that. It's just been word gets around in the community. I had built the Spotify clone that I did some community sessions on, and it's all just gone from that, really.
Awesome. Yeah, and then my second part, maybe you can talk more on this later. I'll let you get through your slides. As a father of two myself, security for my family has been top of mind when considering contract or freelance. And I was wondering if you'd like to talk a bit about your experience on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me with contracting, I've sacrificed so much valuable time with the kids. I'd be typically having to work away, all but my probably the last 6 months of contracting was working away. So I'd be away Monday to Friday. I'd be traveling Friday evening, on the road again like Sunday lunchtime. So really, I had one and a bit days per week with the kids. I'd try and pack in as much quality time as I could. But yeah, that was a massive sacrifice. Now, since I've been freelancing all the time with the world, all the summers together. So yeah, for me, of the two, freelancing's been so much better for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
So yeah,
Sorry, Franco, there's a
sorry,
couple more questions now in the chat.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
I just,
Mhm.
firstly, Nathan wants to know when you're going to New Zealand.
As soon as you're ready to have us, we've been pressuring you to do a UG, haven't we, Nathan?
We're working on it, man.
UG or a conference? Yeah, well, absolutely. Give us a date. We'll be over 100%.
Next question. When you say ideal clients, how do you handle an ideal client? And do you see Power Pages development growing at a faster rate than, say, Power Apps?
I would say over Canvas apps, yes. And I would say the reason for that being that the scale of the project. So even if there aren't necessarily more projects, the budget is bigger for Power Pages because you're reaching the customers directly. So imagine with a Canvas app, you might on a large project be touching hundreds of users, maybe thousands of users. On a Power Pages project, realistically, that could be millions. So it might be a passport office. It might, for me in the UK, that was the police. So that there's such bigger scope for it. And if you imagine you're indirectly benefiting end customers with a Canvas app or a model-driven app. With Power Pages, again, my biased opinion, I'm getting to impact those customers directly. So I'm allowing them to self-serve, to interact with the workflows 24/7. So yeah, I think, like I said, about the matter of scale. And usually when the business cases come up, it's been on that kind of thing. So how can we take a company that can currently only handle 100,000 inbound calls in a year and make them able to handle 1 million inbound calls a year? Well, it doesn't quite work that way because they can't just multiply their team that much. So they've got to find efficiencies like providing a self-service portal, which is where Power Pages comes in. But that's not to say it's the biggest. So it might well be Fabric. It might be something completely different next year. It's just that's the one that landed for me.
Thank you.
No problem.
Reese Campbell says, how much work would you estimate comes from YouTube or blogging, if any?
YouTube for me, because I'm terrible at it, probably 5% of the work that comes in. And usually that's when I've done, not from my own channel, when I've guested on somebody else's. So in fact, yes, I find that much more valuable than my own YouTube content. People have mentioned that they've seen me on the Engineered Code YouTube shows, see me on Victor Dantas' Zero to Hero. So I'd say the guesting, 100% really valuable. Blogs, I get lots of business through the blog, yeah. So I mentioned community stuff. I kind of bundled the blog in with that, but yeah, definitely.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's it for questions now, Franco, if you want to carry on.
Okay. I will try and pick up the speed, but Sarah, Keith, feel free to crack the whip. Right, so I'm going to go through some top tips now, kind of against the clock. We'll go through as much as we've got time for. This is very different to when I only have the 7 minutes at the end of Scottish Summit. So my biggest
tip. A few
tips
more
for
minutes, Franco. It's recorded, so if anyone has to drop off, we can go over a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, okay. Right, so biggest tips, what was so life-changing for me with freelancing. So first of all, going deep on one product. So we mentioned for me, that's Power Pages. I'm not a jack of all trades freelancer. I've got some supporting skills, so I know all of Dataverse Power Platform pretty much, but the front door, the key aspect of that project is Power Pages. Building in public is what was pivotal for me, building the Spotify clone. Going async and breaking away from working 9 to 5 for a single client, Monday to Friday, that was probably the biggest change, the most rewarding change that I made. And again, going back to how that works with being a parent, such a massive difference. It also meant that I could multiply my income, and it also meant that the more productive I was, the more profitable I was. Whereas sometimes I found as maybe a contractor, the more productive I was, just the more work that I had to do. You can't just sit on your hands. It's like, right, cool, you've done the work in 2 hours, here's 6 hours more work. Whereas I would, as freelancer, and to be honest, I'd say, right, I've delivered that in 2 hours rather than 8 to the agreed quality. I'm done for the day. I'd also say learn what's the unique value that you add. So what can be done only by you. So this really with scaling up in mind, that if you do want to assemble a small team or subcontract to other people, learn what it is that absolutely is your special sauce, what is so hard to farm out. You focus on that bit and maybe farm out other things. So for me, I would say that's the creative problem solving, that's the translating requirements into build lists, not necessarily the actual coding or the build itself. And what deliverables do customers value the most? So I kind of touched on this before, that things like the solution diagrams, documentation, workshops, all add massive value to the project overall, but they're not the bits that, in my experience, the customer perceives the value in. They're kind of a necessary step on the way, a necessary evil, a prerequisite, however you want to word that. They don't see the ROI in those things. Absolutely become magnetic. So that would be doing things like the content marketing, appearing at community events, and building in public. You're not going out chasing business, the business is coming to you. So in my case, you think of Power Pages in the UK, or you think of Power Pages that have got a professional look and feel. Quite often I'll be the one that the businesses come to. Where possible, I would say avoid working in real time with a client. So working remotely is a great first step, but you're only halfway to freedom at that point. So if you're still working live with a client, you're so much limiting what you can earn. Spending all your time in workshops and meetings is not going to allow you to multiply your income. So as a freelancer, kind of the opposite of that, asynchronous working is like a cheat code. So as an example, a day of my time costs £1,000. So you might think a day is a day, that's the maximum. Wrong. So if you consider, even to my own clients that are already paying that rate, they perceive, for example, a day's portal development very differently to a day spent with me requirements gathering in a workshop, or when I'm delivering live training. Quite often they'll suggest that should be a lower cost, because clearly they see a different perceived value in that. So the things that customers typically see the most value in with me is the actual development, the coding. As I say, I think it's more the solution in the translating requirements into the build list, but it's all about what's perceived as valuable to the customer. And that's the work that I want to be doing, that the bit where I feel I add the unique value, not the bits that I would just be repeating cookie cutter style from one project to the next. And so the beauty of the async is that I can multiply my income. I can deliver 2 to 3 days results in one day. So bill multiple days for one calendar day. I know what it is that how long it would be taking other teams to deliver a lot of this work. That's kind of what I base this on. But also, if I'm just feeling insanely productive, I've not anything else I can be doing with that day or that week, I'll typically just be building up work ahead of when the client's going to ask for it. I'll not dwell on that too much. Right, so getting yourself known and finding clients. So CV, portfolio, case studies, super important. So they want to know the challenges you face, what were the headline features and technology you've used, what's the impact that the project made. So that, as I said, I'm keeping an ongoing log of that throughout the project. So it's not a challenge trying to think back to what that was afterwards. Case studies are essentially what make up all of my CV. So I know some people sweat over fitting a resume on one page. For example, mine's more like 20 pages, and that's after quite a bit of editing. I strongly recommend, I say, you do that throughout the project while it's all fresh in your mind. And again, if you can build in public, there's a few times I've had to use the excuse in an interview, well, yeah, I'd love to show you what you're asking for, but it's behind a login wall. I'm not allowed to show it. It's behind an NDA or whatever. I need a better way to address that. So that's why my Spotify clone came along, and also part of why I helped I volunteered to build the Scottish Summit portal, because again, many times we've got the blocker when customers come to me is we're sold on governance, we're sold on the tech stack, we're sold on the fact that it's Microsoft technologies and SaaS and all this good stuff, but do they have to look as horrible as the Microsoft examples? So it's so nice to just be able to say, here's a quick answer, no it doesn't. So you wouldn't know Scottish Summit necessarily is a portal, you wouldn't know the Spotify clone is a portal, and that's really the last obstacle in their sales process. Right, so repeat business and the long term. The longer you stay, sorry, messed up there. So the longer you stay at freelancing, the easier it is. So that's thanks to repeat business, referrals, recommendations. And a hidden benefit with a repeat business is so much more of it is the useful work. So you're not having to waste time going through onboarding, red tape, reference checks, all that stuff that you're already on board, you've already got the trust, you've already got the relationships, the understanding of the building. So actually you've become so much more valuable to that customer than what you were the first time around. So there's less selling to do as well. So I would say repeat business is the best business, reaping all those benefits. And if you've done a good job, you should already be top of mind. So quite often now I'm hearing from customers that I've done Power Pages projects for before, and now they're asking me, but it was a great experience. We like the way we work together. Can we come to you for custom pages, for Canvas apps, for Dynamics Works, Power BI, Power Automate, whatever it is, or even just hand holding on other projects to help them through the tender process, that kind of thing. So there's so much more reward if you treat each project right than just getting paid for that time that you spent on it. And yeah, again, next time around, I'm not a bit against competition. I'm not having to interview, I'm not having to discuss rates. So many positives. So treat your customers right. So the other thing that I would say as part of how I've become so productive is keeping this in mind. When you create one thing, you create many things in the process. So I would say at the very least, for every project, there's two outputs. There's what we build and there's what we learn. So if we're not making the most of the learning, we're leaving loads on the table. But we want to build in time to solidify that learning. So it may be technical learning, or it may be a particular process for a particular industry. It might be a design approach. It might be a new topic in soft skills like creative thinking. But yeah, the more you can invest in yourself and take out of every project, the better. Also, I would say a big difference compared to what I've seen with, I'm going to sound like such a twat saying this, but compared to bench warmers on bigger projects is I'll make a point of I'm looking for what's the most transformational thing that I can do. So it's not just right, we've got a list of tasks that the project manager probably all thinks are of equal priority, and you go and cherry pick, get whichever ones you want to work on. What are the easy tick box tasks? I'll be thinking in terms of scale, impact, leverage, the domino effect. So which one of these tasks is going to de-risk the project? Which task, if we break its back now, just makes everything else less risky and more likely to deliver on time? I'd also say as well, I mentioned briefly before, productivity is profit for me. So how can we be more productive in each project? What I will do, rather than, as I mentioned before, we'll get to the end of one project and just scrap that, shut my laptop down, hand it back, move on to the next project, is I'll mine that for value. So I'll be thinking, what code snippets can I abstract? What approaches that we used on that project can I use on others? It could even be things like not just code, but I would say approaches, design patterns, emails, templates that I've used, slide decks for maybe it's pre-sales or showing out of the possible, all those things. What is going to be reusable on the next project? And the benefit of that is you get way faster, you get more consistent from one project to the next. And if you're faster to deliver the same quality of result, then you're more profitable. So I invest a lot of time in my toolkit. So my non-coders approach, so I'm not traditionally a developer. What I found, I could, so a lot of this sounds very obvious, but could just get the code snippet that I've Googled or that ChatGPT's generated, copy and paste it in. If it works, cool, move on to the next task. I learned to invest some more time with that. So each bit of code that I'd use, each skill that I'd learned, spend that bit more time with it and squeeze every bit of usefulness out of it. So I don't just treat it as a one-off and conclude that, yeah, that only works for that one situation. I'll be thinking, how else can I leverage that skill? Try to see past that very specific application of it. So how could I abstract out that code? How could it be used in other situations? What's the pattern in that code? How could I use it in creative and novel ways? So there's a lot of more boring techniques that I ended up leveraging on the Spotify clone. That was all right. I've seen how I can leverage a file. If I can leverage a PDF to show on the front end, why can't that be artwork for a track? Why can't it be audio to play when you're on the album page? And where could this have come in the past? So what gaps have I failed to fix on other projects that this could have unlocked? So it's not a massive extra step, but again, I fixed the problem on the project. How can I then invest in myself to make sure that's not an issue next time and that I'm extending my my toolkit? I'd also say as well that this, to me, now seems obvious, but not my first couple of projects. But what is the client's goal? Quite often think it would just be, right, we'll build it, hand it over to you, job done. Whereas for them, their ultimate goal might be to have a team that's skilled up in doing what I do by the end of the project. So I've got a lot of those ongoing customers where every novel requirement still comes to me, but any that they're tackling for the first time, anything tackling for the first time comes to me, but any repeat problems, I've armed their staff to be able to deal with themselves. I'd say treat every contract period like it's your probation. Sorry, that's repetition there. So very quickly, some lessons from toxic projects then. I would say, so it's not all plain sailing. You don't always necessarily get every invoice paid on time and get on with every customer. So I would say, do take a deposit. US clients in particular, totally cool, and that's the norm doing that. Do due diligence on clients. I've had my fingers burnt by startups in the past where it feels like it's all guaranteed work and the money's waiting. It's like, oh, well, we just need to wait and see if we get the next round of funding. Not a nice position to be in. Also work out who it actually is the client. So sometimes it'll feel like you're working directly for the end client, and only when it comes to invoicing time do you realize there's an intermediary like a partner or another non-Power Platform technology house involved, so that you want to know up front. Some gotchas might be that you find out on the day that you invoice that you should have got a purchase order number, or that the payment terms are something ridiculous like 90 days. I don't deal with that, but I always prioritize good payers, and I'll have that conversation in advance, make sure that we're on the same page. That I typically do 30 days payment terms and nothing more than that. Don't let their urgency become your urgency. And like I say, with the contracting, if it's an urgent requirement, see that as a red flag. And again, sure, it seems really obvious, but don't start phase 2 before phase 1's paid off. Sometimes you'll have the urgency and the pressure for the customer. This is great, yeah, we just need to keep on moving because we've got this next milestone. And before you know it, you're having to chase for 3 or 6 months invoicing and then realize you've got a problem. So yeah, don't put yourself in that boat. I'd say don't clear your workload for anyone. I've had a lot of people ask for exclusivity, so I'll tell everyone in advance I'm working for 3 to 5 customers at any one time. Quite often they'll be cheeky and say, well, if we can guarantee you the money, can we just have your entire time for these 3 months? And the answer is always no. And for me, it's a very personal one, but don't sacrifice summer or whatever are your favourite times of year. And I would say again, take that financial pressure off yourself. Don't take responsibility for paying subcontractors. If you are looking to scale up, let them invoice the client themselves, and don't let that become your headache. And sorry, final slide, I know we're a little bit over, but some tough love. So as a freelancer and very much as a contractor as well, you are being paid to deliver value and to bring the experience. Don't expect to earn just for being a bum on the seat, just because, right, well, I had my laptop on Tuesday, you didn't give me any work, but I still expect to be paid for Tuesday. Don't expect to be paid to learn on the job. Don't expect praise and reassurance. Doesn't work that way. As contractors and a freelancer, doing an amazing job, in my opinion, it is the minimum expectation. Don't even expect to be given a task list. So quite often I'm asked, what are the tasks? So we've never done a Power Pages project before. What is the path from zero to launch? What are the milestones? What are the tasks? I've got to come up with that. And I would also say, harsh but true, but if you're looking to break into contracting and freelancing, and you want to be earning the top dollar from day one before you've got the experience and before you've got the proven skills and the portfolio, it's unrealistic. Give yourself a bit of transition time to work up to that, rather than expect it from day one. And breathe.
Thanks very much.
Let's go to questions.
Oh, I can hear myself again.
There we go.
I'm just looking at
That's
the
right.
chat. There's a question in there, Franco, from Gabrielle, who would love to see a Spotify clone. Do you have a blog post or a YouTube video or something that you can share?
I do, yeah. I'll drop that in the chat in a moment. That's from Scottish Summit, I think 2021, when it was pretty fresh back then.
Any other questions?
I think there's one more in the chat from Mark a bit further back there. Can you talk more on building in public? I mean, we just mentioned there the Spotify clone. Do any clients have you on a retainer with a set number of hours each month that are use or lose? That's from Mark.
Yeah, I've got some customers on that basis, yeah, on the retainer and use or lose. But more usually it's project based, largely like it would be with permanent or contract. But yeah, typically that would be the first discussion, and that's how I got moving from contracting to freelancing. That it's awesome, we've delivered, it's on time, we're happy it's delivering the value. We can't afford to have a full-time team on just for the sake of it if we ever do make any changes. So yeah, they're at least discussing how do we have that ongoing engagement. But as I've got such a spread of customers, I'm not feeling the need necessarily to keep doing that continuous billing. It might be something to look at more in future. In fact, so just get that and just drop that link in the chat that I mentioned. So that's my Scottish Summit 2021 building a Spotify clone with Power Apps portals,
I've put it in the chat.
Cool. What Power Pages used to be.
Thanks, folks. Great. Any other questions for Franco? Okay.
I apologise that was a bit death by slides, but the irony is I only had one slide at Scottish Summit.
I thought it was a great presentation, by the way, just to give you feedback.
Thanks very much.
I think so, because when you asked me to do this session with Scottish Summit, I actually didn't really know the difference between contract and freelance. So, and I felt a bit like silly not knowing really. So understanding that, and I know speaking to people since that session, a lot of people felt the same. What is the difference between contract, freelance, and what are the benefits? So I think, yeah, we appreciate the effort you've put into that for sure.